everybody, and welcome to the second episode of our podcast series, Insights for Supplemental Insurers on the Impact of Grief for Customers. As you can recall from our first series, we designed this discussion, this podcast, to help support the idea of what grief is and how it impacts people in so many different ways. My name is Christy McGuire, and I have the pleasure of welcoming Sadeh Eccles to today's episode to discuss emotional pain and physical health. And one of the discussion points in today's episode will be on the emotional journey of infertility. Sadeh is an EAP counselor at Workplace Options. She holds a master's degree in psychology and is currently working on completing her doctorate in human services and organizational leadership and management. Such an amazing background. She has extensive clinical experience working with those battling mental health challenges. Sadeh, we're so honored to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Excellent. Can you help our audience understand the link between emotional pain and physical health? Because there is a link there that most people don't recognize.
Absolutely. So with emotional pain and physical health, there has been some studies that showed there's some correlation between the two. So for instance, if you have someone who's waiting for a diagnosis of some sort, they can become anxious, they can become stressed. And what that tends to do is if someone is anxious, then they may start to feel symptoms of a heart attack, right? So tightness in the chest, difficulty breathing. If someone is stressed because they're waiting for a diagnosis, it actually could weaken their immune system and cause them to become sick. And so as they're going back for more tests, it's now presenting or could present as something different, something more. Their labs can come back a lot more than what it may actually be. So, there's definitely some correlation between someone who is worried about their diagnosis and how they're actually feeling in regards to being anxious.
It's a tough thing when you're waiting for a diagnosis or you're experiencing physical pain and you're not sure what's going to happen. You can lose sleep. You can feel depressed. You can feel sad and anxious. You don't want to work. There's just so many factors. What do you think are some of the psychological factors that are linked to emotional pain?
Emotional pain, our emotions comes from our psychological factors, right? So psychologically, we're talking about anxiety, anger. Anger is actually an emotion. So you're talking about anxiety, depression, stress. Those things are where you get the anger, the sadness, the worry, the concern. A person can feel immense sadness, lack of motivation. If they're depressed, they're now sad. They're not motivated to clean. They're not motivated to go to work. A lot of people don't want to get out of bed. They feel like they're in this dark hole. And so a lot of times, if you've been diagnosed with some sort of, or if you're experiencing some sort of psychological factor, like any of the more common ones, then, you definitely experience a wealth of emotional pain, right? Emotional pain is a complex and deeply personal experience of like distress, anguish, suffering, and so it's just like, it's one of those things where it's kind of, you have A and so you're going to feel B.
Do you find that it's people don't realize that they're sinking into this sort of depression or anxiety state while they're waiting for that diagnosis or they're waiting for that next step, and they sink so deep that even once they get through the physical element of what they're going through, it's hard to bounce back? And then on the other hand, are there people that can, they self-recognize that I've got this going on, I've got to try to find some coping mechanisms to get me through this until I can get through the process? I know we're talking about two different types of people here, Why do some sort of recognize it over others in finding ways to work through those thoughts?
So the answer to both is yes. There are some who may not recognize that they're sinking into a deep hole, but other people may recognize that they are. And then you have some who know that they're sinking into a deep hole, but don't have the motivation to come out of that hole. And so what I have actually found in talking to a lot of people who may be experiencing some sort of psychological, let's say like depression, majority people know and understand that they have some form of depression or at least symptoms of depression. Honestly, it just depends on the person will. A person who understands it and is fully aware of it may utilize some tools but find that it's not helpful, and so they don't want to do anything to help try and get them through. They just want to mask the pain. Then you have others who they want to try and utilize tools and see if it works. And so they reach out for support. They may reach out to talk to a counselor or reach out to talk to friends, but then they don't want to burn their friends out. And so they're looking for the ability to talk to someone and unload on this person and not feel guilty about doing that.
Which is where talking to another individual, whether it's a friend, a coworker, someone that's been through the same situation, or a counselor even, right? Just having that ability to release your thoughts builds those endorphins in the brain, right? It helps them feel better in that moment. It gives them hope.
Absolutely. The one thing that a person wants to do is feel heard. They want to feel validated in how they feel. They want to know that they're not crazy. They want to know that what they're feeling is actually what they're feeling and nothing more. And so a lot of times they may feel they can't get that from a friend or from a family member because what do? They want to offer advice and their own opinion, right? But when you speak to a counselor, you're provided a safe space. You're provided a space that is judgment free, and you can speak to your heart's delight about whatever is on your mind and your heart. And so at the end of that conversation, when you have the power of a good conversation, right, this person now feels relieved. They feel heard. They feel validated. They feel like, even if this person was never in my shoes, I feel like they understand where I'm coming from, and they're not just offering me some textbook advice or what they think I should do based on their opinion.
So I have to ask, not to digress to a different topic, but just to sprinkle this in. We live in a very demanding digital world, and I have kids, and I'm sure their kids will have access to all this technology, which is amazing, and it does a lot for us, providing us access to a lot of things. But it also hurts us in a lot of ways. And I see a lot of people, when they're dealing with physical pain or physical health in some format, starting to do a bunch of research on their own, watching videos, whether it's TikTok or they're on social media sites or they're doctor Googling their problem, and they're getting misaligned and the wrong information, which is actually setting them into deeper depression and anxiety. Where we see the big strides is that connecting with a human, which we're losing that pathway, which really helps someone. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the digital world definitely can harm a lot more than it can help. Unfortunately, it will create a lot of internet doctors. Everyone will try and start to self-diagnose because when you put something in, let's say you search infertility or causes of infertility, right? It can give you a number of things that can possibly cause the infertility, and then they'll lead you down this rabbit hole of other possible reasons for infertility. And so when you go to your doctor's appointment and you say, hey, I Googled causes of infertility, now it takes away from the actual cause, right? And so honestly, I usually encourage a lot of people to kind of step away from the internet if they are in the process of trying to become diagnosed or if they're experiencing some concerning symptoms, and to more so immediately go to their doctor and, voice their concerns and ask the doctor, what are some possible ways? And so get it from the professional instead of the social media professionals.
Yes, I think that is a healthy step for somebody that's experiencing a condition like infertility. Infertility has a lot of statistics, but it is estimated to affect 1 in 6 couples globally. And up to 40% of women experience infertility. That when they're experiencing it, they have a psychiatric diagnosis that comes along with that in forms of depression or anxiety. Do you see any other common psychological effects of infertility on people?
Yes. So there are actually psychological effects that a person can go through when talking about infertility. You're talking about, of course, again, stress that can lead to PTSD, a person who may be trying to become pregnant and then just month after month becoming disappointed. Person may feel guilty, hopeless. There's a number of things that that a female or someone who's trying to conceive can go through when you're talking about the journey of infertility, especially in a sense where they're dealing with hormonal changes, whether they're being injected with hormones, those that may be trying to conceive through IVF, or if you have someone who has a hormonal imbalance, those also play a significant role in our emotional and mental well-being. It continues to make a person spiral, right, emotionally and mentally when they're trying to conceive, or if they have this feeling that they may be infertile or that their partner may be infertile.
We're focusing on the topic of grief here. Can you tell our audience, what does grief related to infertility look like, and how does it really differ from other types of grief? Is it the same or is it different?
When we're talking about grief, it's because we experience a loss, right? And so a person who is on their journey of infertility, are they experiencing a loss? Yes. They're not, some may not be able to conceive at all. And then you have some who may be able to conceive, but have lost their child in the process. Then you have some who may have made it all the way to the end, but then lost their child and now they had to give birth to a stillborn. So when you're talking about grief and infertility, it's experiencing a loss. So it generally is the same. Now, what is different is how each person responds to that grief. And that's where you go into some people being anxious. You have some people being depressed. You have some people, where they will not allow them to feel those things, and they just keep pressing on and finding ways to try and cope through this, and so grief in itself is actually, honestly, and unfortunately, a huge part of the infertility journey.
And do you see that it differs between men and women?
Yes. I don't want to generalize. A good number of women are emotional, right? I generally say, we women tend to wear our heart on our sleeves, right? So we let people know how we feel. We're actually very vocal about what's going on with us compared to a male who may hold it in. And so they internalize their grief, and, I've seen quite a few men where they become stoic, and so I've heard some couples say, or a wife say about her husband, I don't know if he feels sad about the fact that we can't conceive a child or that we lost our child, whereas the husband may say she cries all the time, nonstop. She doesn't want to do anything. And so, yes, there is a difference. And I do believe that that's another untapped resource that is needed, where couples counseling for those that are experiencing this infertility journey, so that we can try and figure out how we can get the couples to look at each other as partners and not enemies.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. I've heard that word stoic. It's definitely come up a lot when somebody's going through something difficult. You know, I think you're right. It goes away from just the individual needing to talk to someone that can help them through their own personal concerns. But if you are part of a couple, you have a partner or a spouse that's involved in this process, they're just as scared and worried as you are. And individuals react differently, like you said, to different things. So you also have to kind of work through how to support each other and take a step back and say, it's okay to feel sad, right? But together we know whether it works out or it doesn't, this is how we're going to work together to be happy and to work through it.
Absolutely.
I think we miss that element. We tend to get selfish and go off on our own tangent and don't involve the other person, just expect them to be there. And I know that can be challenging. So being that our audience is supplemental insurance providers here, and we're talking about different stages of grief as it relates to a situation like infertility, can you recommend any suggested tailored mental health solutions that would be really important for individuals to get care?
Absolutely. This is an untapped field. When a person who is carrying first find out they're pregnant, they are inundated with a whole bunch of resources and support groups and call here, sign up here for all this support. But when, let's say, if a person loses their child, or even a person who is not able to get pregnant, the resources stop. There is not much available other than a couple of phone numbers. And so, you know, I definitely encourage insurance companies to look into providing like actual counseling solutions for some of our people who need it. You know, as we stated earlier, we're talking about the ability to talk to someone, right, judgment free, being able to have that safe space to really unload and, you know, say how this is feeling. And, you know, they don't have the ability to do that. Some people may not be able to actually afford to go to counseling, right? And so I think it would be a great thing if insurance companies were to add a service in which, you know, just like how they have the grief counseling available, you know, to have this counseling available for those that are struggling with infertility, or those who have experienced loss from infertility, or who's going through relationship issues because of infertility. You know, more than just the websites and the phone numbers that, you know, is scarcely available. You know, this is something that honestly is not tapped into at all. And I think that, honestly speaking, they would be ahead of the game if this is a program that they added to their package and, you know, offered to their members.
You know, I love your point. Today, and I can speak for myself, we are overloaded and inundated with information, whether it's from your doctor, the internet, your company. It's information overload. And half the time, when you're not doing well, you don't know where to start. Do I go to the internet? Do I go get to my company benefits? Do I go over here? Really, at the end of the day, if you just had the opportunity to connect with someone and talk to them, just somebody you didn't know, but a professional that could just help you, listen to you, acknowledge your feelings, and provide you with strategies, and to know that that person was there 24/7, unlimited amount of time, anytime, day or night. How powerful would that be to just support you in the moment? Because we don't all have time to leave our houses and go do all these appointments on top of the medical appointments that we're receiving. So I love your approach, and I think our world needs it more. If we could just bring that human connection back, I think we could help a lot of people.
Absolutely. I am all for the counseling. Honestly, I am so happy that there's more people available to receive counseling virtually and through telehealth. Prior to 2020, that wasn't necessarily a very popular concept. And so I think now that more people have the ability to receive it, we now need the services and support to, for what it is that they're looking for.
I want to thank you, Sade, for your time today. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. Sade, before we sign off, is there anything else that you think our listeners should know?
Honestly, I think it's really beneficial to look at this particular subject in regards to infertility and support, and just see, like, you can see for yourself what resources are out there and how you can make an impact, and show your members, like, we hear you and we're here for you.
Thank you. That's amazing feedback and wonderful goals for next steps. Our next episode is going to be published next week, and it will be on coping with the loss of a pet. And always, for more information on workplace options services, or to leave us a comment and feedback, you can access the link to the Contact Us page in the show notes, where you'll be able to send us a message directly. As always, thank you all. Thank you today, and until next time, take care.